Hello and welcome to my first ever video, and this one is entitled CRISPR Cas9 and Drosophila, or Guns, Bullets and Band-Aids. This seemingly strange title will become less strange, hopefully, as the talk progresses, as will become very, very obvious very fast. I do use lots of metaphors and anthropomorphisms in trying to basically make science more decipherable and memorable, I hope. So, let's start with the cast of CRISPR. So the Cas9 protein, which, yes, is a very, very faint eggshell shade in this diagram here, is the gun. In that, well, after all, without bullets, a gun doesn't do a heck of a lot of anything, but it does cleave DNA when in the presence of a guide RNA. So the bullets, a 20 nucleotide engineered recognition sequence coupled to a strange sgRNA region, causes the guidance of the Cas9 protein towards its destination. And dependent on the presence of a PAM site, which is, okay, yes, now you can see my mouse pointer. And yes, my pointer is set to Woodstock mode. So here we have the protospacer adjacent motif, also known as PAM to its friends, which has to be adjacent to the target site, which recognizes a region in the Cas9 protein itself and causes cleavage of both DNA strands up here and down there at the same time. This is the classic Cas9. I know some of you watching will already be aware that there is Cas9 nickase, but that isn't the topic of this video. So, moving forward, the third part. Here we come with the metaphors again, the Band-Aid. In my case, for modifying fruit flies and fruit fly cells, it's a plasmid containing a 2 kilobase region of homologous DNA that contains the desired mutation in the middle, and very, very crucially, it lacks the guide RNA recognition sequence, because after all, the last thing you want is your Cas9 seeing your repair template and blowing it to bits as well. That kind of defeats the purpose. So, now, let's get up close and personal with the repair template itself, their Band-Aid. And here is a previously worked example, which is already published, so I'm not giving away any secrets. Here we have up top is the region of the fruit fly genome. The PAM motif is lighted in blue, and here we have the guide RNA sequence, and here is where the cut site takes place. And in this particular case, we want to change a histidine into an alanine, and so we had 3 changes in the recognition sequence here, as well as 2 silent mutations, also known as wobbles to their friends. This here is the repair template down low, which introduces the change we're looking for, as well as immunity to guide RNA attack. This is important. So, but that's only half of the puzzle. Once you actually start attempting to make the changes, how on earth are you going to diagnose them? You want it to be fast, easy, and cheap. These are like the trifecta of any good strategy. And so, in our case, we came up with a diagnostic restriction digest assay, which is old technology. It is a classic technology. Old school is still gold. That restriction enzymes are cheap. A restriction digest is cheap and fast. And in our case, the genome contains a recognition site for a particular restriction enzyme here, but the repair template, due to wobbles, is missing it. So therefore, if there is a successful recombination event and introducing our repair template, then the site disappears. A cut PCR becomes an uncut PCR. Nice, clean, and clear. And in our case, I also designed the PCR product to have unbalanced sites, different distances on either side, primer-wise, so that it cut into 2 uneven pieces for easier diagnosis. Here we have an example that you have your wild-type DNA, which is cut into 2 nice, boring, but distinct sizes. If, however, your fly or fly cell line is a heterozygote, you see this uncut fellow up top. So in classical fly husbandry, you always have a CRISPR-Cas modified fly, which you then mate with a wild type. So you'll always get a heterozygote, but you want to know, did the father pass on something extraordinary? And this has the added bonus that you don't need like an extra control to check, is your DNA okay? Is your prep okay? So, because after all, you'll always have wild type at least 50% present, at least in the first instance. So that's why you have these wonderful bands that say, yes, it tells you many things. Did your PCR work? Absolutely. Did your digest work? Also true. However, in a few cases, won't be all of them, I hate to rain on your parade for that, you will see an uncut product, and that's exciting. Then, of course, if you move forward with this successful character, which you will sequence, there's no dodging that bullet, you then move ahead and go forward to do husbandry to get homozygotes of your mutation of interest, and eventually those would give you an entirely uncut PCR, but that's a story for a later date. Point is, you then of course have to see an example. And this also, yes, is not from yesterday, but it was when I was cutting my teeth on CRISPR. And here we have lots and lots and lots of nice, well, not so nice, boring wild type bands of two sizes that say, sorry, 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 all the way. Sorry, sorry, sorry. Positive control, that's a PCR from the repair template, and it is uncut and awesome. However, this is the gel that changed my day for the better. In this quintuple, well, 5 brothers, we got 2 potentially interesting chaps. As it transpires, this one had an insertion of something weird that caused a false positive, but this guy over here was the daddy of a whole line of very successful, wonderful mutant flies. That's the take-home message, is that this part allows you to screen a vast number with, it's not zero labor, but it's low labor, and that's 9/10 of the battle in science. So, I mean, here we have the initial sequencing of those guys, and we have, once again, my trusty pointer, the 1.1, which turned out to be garbage. You would hope for the site where you're wanting to introduce the change and the sites where you introduce the wobbles to cause ambiguity. Here you see 2 voices where there should be 1, but that's great. That's a heterozygote right there. While the chromas before, totally boring. Chromas after, also boring. This is very, very good. We sequence both ways because we want to be crazy sure. However, this guy, it just descends into gibberish because they'd actually had a spurious insertion. But hey, sequencing caught it. That's the point. So it's not a mutation, it's a mutilation. Anyway, but then once, like I said, we do the husbandry, next thing you know, you have nice, happy, homozygous flies that don't die horribly, so you don't have any off-target effects, or at least not today. And this looks, for all the world, like your repair template. It's got the change that you've done designed, and these orange highlighted chaps are silent mutations, the same amino acid, different codon. Mother Nature doesn't know the difference, but we know we were there. So, in summary, and I realize I've kind of gone a mile a minute, you select the guide RNA closest to the target site. I will do a later video about shopping for guide RNA, because trust me, that is more complex than shoe shopping. Well, anyway, and of course you have to design the mutation to introduce change in wobbles. That's a story in itself, and there's actually a tool designed by a friend of mine which helps you design the wobbles and helps you pick out the guide RNA that will give you a good diagnostic digest. Yes, you do have to confirm by sequencing and then repeat screening for homozygotes. Yes, this has been a lot, but trust me, this is the first of many. I didn't want to suffer from decision paralysis and not be able to choose, but here we go. Hopefully the first of many. Hey, if you have questions, feel free to comment. If you're curious to learn more ahead of the rest of the class, then check out the links in my bio, and thank you for watching.